You're listening to the Zoe Turner podcast, business and mindset conversations that will help you move from fear and uncertainty to development and growth so that you can crush both life and business. Please welcome your host, Zoe Turner.
Breast cancer is the second leading cause of death of women here in the UAE, which is where I live, which is second only to cardiovascular disease. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And for those that don't know, it's an annual international health campaign organised by major breast cancer charities every October to increase awareness for the disease and to raise funds for research into its cause, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and cure. First of all, before we go in to talk about your story, Vera, I'd just like to ask you, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for you and to connect with you. And I love unfortunately we are in quarantine and we're not able to move around as much, but one of the gifts is being able to show up more on social media and grow my following and grow my business and all that. And that's what, I guess, how we connected. I posted and was probably reposted by, a breast cancer organization called the Breasties, or I don't know exactly how you found my story, but that's always a gift, because how would I've ever connected with you, So I love that aspect, and that gets me so excited about these international connections, which are so great.
Yeah, and that's what's so wonderful about social media, because I knew that this month that I really wanted to speak to somebody very interesting. And I put on an advert on a local business group we have in the UAE, and I got quite a lot of people saying that they would like to speak to me. And then I put a few hashtags in Instagram. I can't remember what they were, obviously something to do with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And that is how I found you. And I just thought, I'll send her a message and see whether or not she would be interested. So it was pretty quickly that I found you. I can't remember what the hashtag was, but I could see that you're very active on social media. And I was happy to find you because I came across your profile, and obviously I had a quick look at it, and I thought that, we were in kind of like similar fields, and, we'd have like synergies and stuff. So I thought you'd be the perfect person for me to speak to. Would you introduce yourself to the audience, Vera, and kind of, tell us a little bit about what you do and your story?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my name is VeraVentura. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. Originally, I'm from Miami. And I have been in recovery actually for 16 years from food addiction. I was actually bulimic for about 7-8 years, and went on like a very deep spiritual path starting around 24 years old. I'm 40 now. Where I started meditating every day and eliminated flour and sugar and alcohol and drugs and men, things that were all very addictive for me. And was sort of like a pinnacle of health. I became a yoga teacher. I was really hyper conscious of my body, not in an obsessive way, but just being healthy, like eliminating chemicals and pharmaceuticals and, just anything that would potentially be cancer causing. And my father had passed away of cancer 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer. So I was like, oh my God, I never thought that I could ever have cancer, to be honest. And whenever, I saw the breast cancer events, I'd be like, oh, that's so sad for them. I was very much in the line of thinking, it's environmental, and it's and the choices that you make, right? And I could do my best to avoid the environmental impacts and the choices that I make on a daily basis by healthy living and conscious living. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was just like a huge shock. So basically, I had felt like lumps in my breast, but really like a really big mass. So I always thought like breast cancer would just be these like little pea lumps. And it was like a big mass. And I was actually breastfeeding at the time. I have 2 kids. So my daughter was still breastfeeding, even though she was like quite old, like 4 years old. She was still breastfeeding. So I just thought, okay, well, you know, it's from breastfeeding. It's some sort of like blocked milk duct. And I went into the doctor and they were like, oh yeah, it's a block, whatever. Don't worry about it right now. Just wait till you're done breastfeeding and we'll do a mammogram or something. And my mom was actually really persistent with me. She's like, have you gotten a mammogram? Have you gotten a mammogram? And it's interesting because in the US where I live, most women don't get mammograms till they're 45. So I was 39. I'm 40 now. So this is last year, almost a year ago, exactly. And I I was like, okay, this is a little weird. I'm going to stop breastfeeding on that side. So the lump really didn't go away. It felt like it was actually getting bigger. So then I went back again and I was like, okay, can we like check this out? And so we did a mammogram, which is where they like take your boob and then they have your boobs and basically they get compressed and then scanned. It's not that enjoyable of an experience if you've ever done a mammogram. Have you done one, Zoe?
I think I have. Yeah, I think I've done one once. Maybe I would remember if I had, but I'm pretty sure.
You would definitely, a woman would definitely remember a mammogram. So if you didn't do a mammogram, you would definitely remember. It is not something that's pleasurable at all, but it needs to be done, right? So it happened, and I'm thinking, okay, it's definitely going to be benign. Like, there's no way I could have. It's probably just some cyst. And then I got the news back that actually it was a tumor that they were concerned about, right? And they wanted to do a biopsy. So there was tumors on both sides, not just the right side, and not just the right side, but also the left side. And at that point, they don't tell you have cancer. They just say like that you have some concerning areas, right? So then you have to wait to do a biopsy. And that in the biopsy is when they take samples. And that's where they take a piece of the tissue from the tumor. So that's another process. Once again, not that enjoyable. It's like an ultrasound and and then you just wait. And so a lot of like the whole uncovering of breast cancer is actually a lot of waiting, which is important to have like a deep spiritual grounding because it could be very anxiety producing. And I know a lot of women struggle with that during the waiting time. So I called on a lot of my foundation, my wellness, my yoga, my, meditation, my, just faith, like, okay, calming, grounding, because stress, you don't want to be stressed through the process. Like that's the idea. You don't want to be stressed through the process, even though it can be stressful. Right. So then you're waiting. And then I find out that it was actually cancerous. Right. So both sides were cancer. So then you're getting that information. And then you have to wait to find out what the diagnosis is, right? Is it stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4? Did it metastasize? Did it go into your body? Is it in your lymph nodes? Like these are all nuances that are very like, oh my gosh, I could die tomorrow. Like you just don't know, right? Is it metastatic, right? So then you have to wait more, and then there's more, uncovering of that. And so mine actually was stage 1 and stage 2. So it actually hadn't metastasized beyond my lymph nodes. And the way that they determined that was I had a surgery where they took out my lymph node. It's called the sentinel node. And they examined it to make sure there was no cancer in that sentinel node. So that's how I found out. So there was a bit of relief because once it's gone into your body, that's very, very serious. And requires a lot of action. Not that I didn't have a lot of action as stage 1 and 2, but at that point, your doctor sits down with you and you come up with a plan of action, which involves usually like chemotherapy, things like that. So the next chapter of the story is also genetic testing, right? So there were a lot of red flags because I was under 40. I had bilateral breast cancer, bilateral, which means both sides. And I was really healthy, right? You know, that's a red flag because most women don't get breast cancer until later on, like in their 60s, you know, especially bilateral.
Mm.
And so I went for genetic testing. And once again, another waiting game because that takes about 3 weeks to come back. And on the form, you have like these little boxes that you check out, right? Like, are you this? Are you that? Are you this? Are you that? One of the boxes is, are you an Ashkenazi Jew? Well, I am full-blooded Jew, Jewish descent. However, I'm Sephardic and Ashkenazi. And Ashkenazi is the European, Sephardic is the more like Spanish side. Because my family was originally from Spain on the Sephardic side. My father's family is the side that my grandmother had breast cancer. My father died of pancreatic cancer. My mother's side is the Ashkenazi didn't. So I thought, all right. But I still, of course, checked Ashkenazi Jew.
What does being a Jew have to do with having breast cancer?
Great question. So the Ashkenazi Jewish population has a higher rate of a certain kind of mutation called the BRCA1.
Interesting.
BRCA2.
Okay.
So there's certain mutations because there was a genetic bottleneck during the Inquisition and the Crusades, where a lot of Jews were killed and forced to live in like small ghettoized areas where they intermarried. And the key to genetic diversity is interbreeding. Really, that's like the key to it. That's why if you look at like the Habsburgs or, you know, like royalty, like the British royalty or something, there's just like a lot of inbreeding, you know, and that causes genetic problems down the line. Not so much now, but back in the day, like people would marry their cousins and stuff like that. So same thing with probably the Jewish population, when there was just a lot of genetic inbreeding. So there's a lot of genetic issues with the Ashkenazi population. So this is one of there are certain markers that Jewish people have for cancer. So anyway, I waited 3 weeks for that. And I think in between that time, we came up with a plan of action for what I was going to do with the situation with the cancer, which involved like heavy chemotherapy, like super blasting chemotherapy, which is challenging for me. I work in holistic health. As I mentioned before, I'm a yoga teacher. I actually used to be a high school teacher, but then I left teaching to do something that I was really passionate about. And that's what led me to work with essential oils and holistic supplements, things like that, that would be more natural than pharmaceuticals and especially chemical medical drugs. And that's exactly what chemo is. It's literally chemical medicine that's pumped in your body, and it makes you really sick. It makes your hair fall out, and it blasts the chemo. So there's that was like a whole journey in itself. And I'm sure women who are listening to this who are like drawn to the holistic world would find it really hard to do chemo, because it literally is just destroying the good and the bad cells, and it makes you really, really sick.
Yeah.
Whereas like I was even in my own holistic community almost judged sometimes for doing chemo. I remember somebody said, "Oh, that's just gonna kill. Like it killed my mom. It's terrible for you," or something like that. And granted, yeah, my father, after he got a shot of chemo, he was no longer able to walk, and then shortly later, like he died. His body couldn't handle the chemo. So I was definitely, that was a really hard step. I had another friend who was diagnosed with cancer, not breast cancer, but she ended up going a completely different route, ended up going to Mexico, doing frankincense infusions. And, I still have people emailing me, holistic doctors and things like that, which you know what? I totally understand it because I work in the holistic field. But at the same time, number one, insurance doesn't cover that. And number two, like I do want to go with statistics. And I did have friends who had gone through these kind of, chemotherapy, and they're in remission and things like that. So I had an open mind, but it was hard. Like the cancer doctors were really like firm with me about it. And I didn't want to lose my hair. Okay. And I'll touch on that in a second. So in any event, and feel free to stop me, Zoe, if I'm talking too much. Do you have any questions?
Not at the moment. But okay. I will. I'll butt in if I need to.
Okay, cool. So it turned out after I got the genetic testing back that I actually had the genetic mutation that causes cancer. And it's called the BRCA1.
So what was the timeline from you being diagnosed to kind of where we are now?
Well, I was diagnosed exactly last year, November. So, I mean, where are we now in the timeline? About 2 months in. From when I got the genetic results.
So you got your results back,
and so, yeah, I mean, basically, everyone knows about Angelina Jolie. And so basically we share the same type of genetic mutation. So insurance companies actually now pay for women to proactively remove the breast and the ovaries as a result of this genetic mutation because of the high risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So it's called the BRCA1. BRCA1 and BRCA2 genetic mutation. So I'm a carrier of that I inherited either from my dad or my mom, but most likely from my dad's side because he died of cancer. His mother died of cancer. And my mom's side, I don't have that on her side. So it's, you inherit it, right? And my daughter has a 50% chance of inheriting it too. But now they can do, they can see in your embryo, not embryo, but they can see, before a baby's born, if they have that, like they can check the embryo cells. I don't know, but they can.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, they can screen for it now. We just didn't screen for it but then you play around with genetics and all that, which could be a little strange as well. But anyway, so I got that, and I honestly will say it was a bit of a relief because I knew that it was nothing like I did, right? It wasn't like a food I was eating or, obviously there could be a lot of environmental factors to it. And even eating out of plastic and, all that, it causes extra estrogen in the body, things like that. There are, in fish, there's definitely red flags with food and hormones and GMO. But I once I found it was genetic, I kind of like relaxed a little bit. And then it was, that time that I was gearing up to do the chemo, and you see these women with the bald head, and like some of them are like, yeah, I got my bald head, and I was not really ready to be that kind of woman. I'll be honest, I'm pretty vain and I love my hair. And I had this really curly, like blonde, well, it was fake blonde. I'm not a natural blonde, but this curly blonde hair. And I was like very attached to it. So that was not, I was really, I'll be honest, that was hard for me. So I did my research, and a friend of mine was like, have you heard of the cold cap? I was like, I have not heard of the cold cap. And the cold cap is this incredible technology. Well, it's basically just like putting ice cubes on your head for about 4 or 5 hours while you're getting chemo. And it freezes the hair follicle. And then your hair is less likely to fall out.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, never heard of that.
Yeah, it's the cold cap. So this would be good for women who don't know about that. So basically, there's this company called Paxman. There's a couple other companies, but I went with the company Paxman. And then what was really cool is there is a company here in the US, not a company, a nonprofit called Hair to Stay. And they actually help finance your cold cap too. So you get like subsidies with the cold, because insurance really doesn't cover it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Although they totally should. They totally should. I think they are working on that, but they totally should. So it's like, it's pretty expensive, but I was able to get a great, discount, and I got the cold cap, and I started going for the chemo, and the chemo makes you, like, I got the big guns, and it just makes you so sick, and you don't want to eat, and you, your hair starts, falling out. Not right away, your hair doesn't fall, but it's cumulative effect. So yeah, the hair will still fall out, but it's like, I never lost all my hair. So I always still look like I had hair,
Mm-hmm.
although it was very, very thin, and everything that was dyed like fell out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I have really short hair now,
Mm-hmm.
but I still never lost, I never lost my hair.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was always still there. Anyway, so I did that. The chemo was really intense. But at the same time, while I was doing my chemo, I was doing my essential oils, like detox, like a lot of like my holistic remedies I was doing in conjunction with the chemo, which I think everyone should do who's going through cancer treatment. It's really important to balance the chemical medicine with the holistic remedies, plant-based remedies. So every time I had chemo, detox, lemon oil, Zendocrine, cleaning out your kidneys, your liver, because that stuff can actually decrease your lifespan as well. Chemotherapy can actually, I know it's preserving your lifespan because it's killing the cancer, but it's also so much wear and tear on your organs. That's really important to clean it out, because it can decrease your lifespan once you're obviously cancer-free. So a lot of that, I continued with like my cellular supplements, things like that, frankincense, for nausea, peppermint, ginger, digestion, there's one called Digestin. So exfoliating by doing, what's it called? Dry brushing, things like that, which is great for skin and circulation. So these are the practices that I practice, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, you do so good! You're doing so good." My doctors were always like, "Oh my God!" So the results were really amazing. Even though chemo was not easy, I had like probably abnormal results as a result, and I kept a lot of hair, more hair than they'd ever seen, and I think that's also as a result of what I was doing with supplements and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really grateful for that. And then once all that was over, I got like a certificate, and it was like, "Congrats, you're done with chemo." And then I got a double mastectomy in April. So right around coronavirus time. And initially I was going to have a total reconstruction where they take my belly fat, because I do have belly fat. I'm pretty thin, but I had belly fat. I had 2 kids. I had belly fat. They're going to take belly fat and put it where my boobs are, because I did not want implants. And I have friends who had implants, and they are getting their implants removed because they have issues as a result of implants. There's a whole movement now to remove implants. My friend just did that yesterday. She's from England, UK. And I knew always I'd never wanted implants. I wanted my own natural tissue. How cool is that? You can have your own fat as your boobs. I mean, hello, who wouldn't want that, right?
So how easy was it for you to make the decision to have the double mastectomy?
Oh, I mean, once they told me I can do the fat transfer and make new boobs out of it, I actually was fine with it. I know a lot of women are like attached to their boobs. I mean, of course, I have a lot of memories with my boobs, and I enjoyed breastfeeding my kids, both of them, and my daughter until she was 4. So I think more the psychological, attachment to breastfeeding and all that. But I wasn't particularly like, I need to have my boobs. I really, for the rest of my life.
Statistically, if you didn't have the mastectomy, what was the chance of you maybe getting cancer again in the future?
It's just 100% recommended for the cancer that I have. So I didn't even entertain those options. But I think it just depends on the type of cancer. Because my cancer is a genetic type, it's 100% recommended by like everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going to get second or third opinions, they're just going to say the same thing. So in that way, I never really fought the double mastectomy. I always knew that. I just wanted to do everything together. You know, I just wanted I didn't want to wake up and have like nothing there.
And yet you're right. It's pretty awesome what you're saying, that they can actually take the fat from your stomach and they can use that for your breast.
Or your butt or like somewhere. Yeah. I mean, there are women who also got like muscle transfer. They can do that, but that's like that's not what I would want, especially being like someone very physical, yoga teacher. Like I don't want to take a muscle from somewhere else and put it where it doesn't, you know, I don't want to, personally, I wouldn't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But now, yeah, it's called the DIEP, DIEP. If anybody's listening,
I guess if you've got a bit of spare fat on your belly, it's almost like having a tummy tuck as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah, it's like having a tummy.
I basically had a tummy tuck too.
Awesome.
I mean, your scar is like really big.
I noticed. I did notice your scar, and it's it is.
Yeah, it's not
huge.
a normal tummy tuck scar. Yeah, it's a big scar. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because they're not just taking fat and like removing it like they would a tummy tuck. They're literally taking fat, tissue, blood vessels to put it into your boobs. So, I mean, the scar will heal. It will fade. You know, it's still like above my bikini line, but it's a huge scar, which I don't personally care. You know, it's like your warrior scars.
Sure, definitely.
So yeah, I mean, that was the idea. And I was like, all right, we're going to do this, and we can do this like in January. And and then they're like, you should do all your chemo first before you do any of that. So I was a little bit bummed out about that. I had to do all the chemo. The chemo was done March-ish, right when March, April, May, somewhere around there, right when the coronavirus hit. I still had to do more chemo. So I think I had more chemo until April. And I think I did my double mastectomy in May, which was, you know, they could not do the reconstruction with the chemo. They could not do the reconstruction with the double mastectomy because of coronavirus time. So the plan had changed. So you had to be flexible. And I was really bummed out about that. I was actually really, really, because it's major surgery, right? It's major surgery. And to do the surgeries twice, double mastectomy was a huge surgery. Reconstruction's a huge surgery, right? So I just wanted to get it one shot, but that wasn't going to happen. And I was like, we should just wait. And they're like, no, you can't wait. You have to do the double mastectomy. So that time was really hard, and I didn't really want to do it. I wanted to wait, but they weren't having it. So I went for it, and I did the double mastectomy, and then they inserted tissue expanders into my breast area. And then I did the double mastectomy, and that was really like initially shocking, you know, to have no breast, and that my husband needed to help me. I went home the same day because no one was staying in the hospital because coronavirus. So that was like intense. And then they deconstructed the tumor inside the breast, and then they discovered it was a different type of cancer than what they thought. And then they suggested I do more immunotherapy. So I have now another year of immunotherapy because of the type of cancer that it is. And so I'm done with the chemo, but I'm doing immunotherapy every 3 weeks, which doesn't make your hair fall out, but it's no fun. I mean, it's still putting like all that chemical poison in your body. Good poison, but it's still, you know,
so the type of cancer that they found that it was it more, I don't know if this is the right word to use because cancer's serious anyway, but was it kind of worse than what they diagnosed before?
Before they felt like they had just blasted what it was, and then after they blasted what it was, another, like underneath the blasting was like
Okay.
another type. So it's just a different type of response the cancer has. So it's going to respond really well to this therapy because, and keep in mind, like I could be totally cancer free right now, and I probably am, to be honest. This is all just preventative. So I live like really, really long life. So this is a 30 to 40% chance that I could have cancer. So 60% chance I don't. So everything I'm doing now, like even the double, after the double mastectomy, everything I do now at this point is all just preventative. So yeah, the immunotherapy is continual preventative. And the estrogen blocking is all preventative. We do estrogen blocking because if it's an estrogen blocking cancer, it's all preventative. So I did the double mastectomy and then more immunotherapy. And then finally they said, you're ready for the reconstruction when the coronavirus wasn't as extreme. And so I just did that 3 weeks ago, exactly. I had a total reconstruction with the deep flap. And I'm really happy with the results, and I'm really grateful. And I love my breast. I love my new stomach. Although there are they do have to tweak it a little bit. Like nothing is ever going to be, right away perfect. So it's kind of like an ongoing thing. Like if you want nipples, and they have to smooth out the sides a little bit of my stomach area. But yeah, the journey is not over. And it continues, and it's just like staying optimistic, staying healthy, taking care of yourself. So much of that is part of the journey, and not getting discouraged, not getting no self-pity, none of that. I can't afford any of that.
Yeah. In your teachings, you talk a lot about self-care and routine. What have you done during this time to enable you to take care of your mental health, and what routines have you put in place?
Yeah, so every morning after my kids go to school, I meditate for a half hour. I connect with a lot of people, like constantly socializing, but like through Zoom, or like I go to 12-step meetings actually for my help with just the food addiction, which could take, especially being quarantined, it's so easy to go to flour, sugar as like a comfort, and so my 12-step meetings help me just connect with other people who are in the same boat I am, so I don't feel alone. I give service to other people. I sponsor other people who are suffering from food addiction as well. So doing service in the morning is really important to get out of your own head, so you don't wake up thinking about yourself, or like checking your social media and just making itself, like, for me, I'm an addict and I'm pretty self-centered as an addict. So to be like, get out of myself is really important. And then just the daily use of just like, eating really healthy food, and taking my holistic, my supplements that are like my omegas and my food nutrient, and using my essential oils and on my skin, and beautifying, and being loving with my husband, spending time with my kids. Like all these things fill my soul. Connecting with my higher power. Those are all things that fill my soul and keep me really grounded. Do I get off the beam sometimes? Of course, like I'm human. I'm not a freaking robot, but those are like my foundations.
Do you find that your background in kind of holistic health, and the fact that you are highly conscious, do you find that that's helped you on this journey? Do you feel that that's helped you get through it? Maybe, I know every person's journey is probably different, and the steps that they take. You alluded to that when you were talking about the chemo, and it's such a personal thing for each individual person, I guess. But do you feel that your background has really helped you get through this?
Yeah, I don't see how it couldn't, right? It's like you're armed with this knowledge, and then you have a community. And in the company that I work for, there's an incredible community of people who have gone down the journey before as well. So pulling on that community of support, saying, hey, Vera, have you, try this and, use this, frankincense. If you Google frankincense, PubMed, there's over 100 studies that show how powerful frankincense is for cancer prevention. Just things like that, where the knowledge is there and people are there to guide you as well. And it's like you don't do it in isolation. It's from other people's journey who can provide that insight as well.
What struck me about you from your Instagram when I was going through your feed was how positive you were. I remember at the time, it was only a few weeks ago and you were in hospital. And I wasn't quite sure what you were in for. I kind of thought it was for a mastectomy, but from what you're telling me, your mastectomy was back in April. But you were in hospital, and just your positive attitude. And, I know Instagram is a different story. Quite often we do put the highlights on there. I was very drawn to the way that you were dealing with it and your positivity and just how you were handling it overall.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any advice that you would give if there's any women out there, Vera, who are maybe going through the same, how they can navigate it mentally with the mental health? Because getting news like this, it could really turn your life upside down. And so wonderful speaking to you is that I'm sure you've had some really low points throughout your journey. I'm sure you have, but you really seem to be quite, kind of balanced, and it's all happened, all really just within the space of a year, Is there any tips or anything that you would be able to give to any women that are maybe on this journey and, how they could cope with it from a mental health perspective?
Sure. My advice would be to connect with some sort of support group, and connect with other women who have gone through it, so you feel like you're not alone.
Yeah. And what you were saying then, that you connect with people a lot socially. I mean, social interaction is so good for our soul anyway, and for our mental health. And it's something that a lot of us don't do a lot of, regardless of our situation. Vera, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting speaking to you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Yeah, we just wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you. And, if anyone's listening, if they want to connect with me, they can follow me on Instagram at Voracious Healing. And also my website is www.veraventura.com.
And the essential oils that you use a lot of, I believe that you have them for sale on your website too.
Oh, yeah. I work with women directly. Actually, I work with women who have cancer and who are going through, and then just regular, moms, whoever, whatever, women, just to help them find the essential oils that will elevate their life. And that brings me so much joy. And all of the consultations are free. And I just love figuring out what's going to work for you. And, whether it be digestion, skin, stress, and then introducing a really like non-toxic plan, because that's really the foundation of wellness, is getting rid of toxic chemicals and anything that would be compromising to your body. And you can't get any more pure than a plant. You just can't. So it really is incredible.
It's good.
And I'm always open to work with people.
It's good to know as well that despite cancer being genetic, and the fact that you were really clean before that and you led a very non-toxic life, it's really good to know that now you're still continuing, and you still, you haven't kind of thought, what's the point?
No, more than ever, more women are getting cancer, more people are suffering as a result of all the stuff that's in the products. And we're not aware of it, especially now with coronavirus, where it's like everyone's just spraying down like with Clorox and all these like heavy chemicals. Yeah, that's not necessarily going to be healthy, especially for our children. And it's just yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm personally a big lover of oils, chemical-free skincare. The only place that I really fall down is my hair, because my hair's quite thick and it's just kind of, I need a good hair mask. So my hair and my makeup, but other than that, I know there are lots of makeup companies out there that are totally chemical-free.
Yeah,
so I guess I do. And there was one, I can't remember the name of it. It's an Australian brand. I think it begins with an N or something. I can't remember. So if you can recommend any good non-chemical-free hair products that really, really work, as good as Kerastase.
What is that?
So
like hair, like hair, like a hairspray.
Kerastase is a brand. It's quite a well-known brand. I think it's part of the L'Oreal family, but it's their hair masks are just absolutely amazing. Like your hair is just so soft.
Wow.
They're so amazing because they're full of chemicals basically. They've even got parabens in it. So I have like a natural hair mask and I have my Kerastase hair mask, and I'll kind of like alternate it, and I'll maybe use the Kerastase like once a week. But yeah, it's got all the silicons and all of that in it.
I don't know.
I'm always on the hunt for a good natural solution for my hair. So if you come across anything, let me know.
I will.
Thank you again for your time, and you've given us some fantastic information there. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And
you're welcome.
And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, because it's about 12 noon over there.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Much love, Vera.
All right, thank you.
Bye.